Welcome to Milestone Moments, the show where we explore the journeys that lead to success. I'm Sheila Slick, your host and founder of 5 Milestones. In every episode, we will bring you insights from the minds of entrepreneurs, leaders, and experts who will share not just their expertise, but the milestone moments that have reshaped their journeys and led to significant achievements. So if you're looking for motivation, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and discover the milestones that mark the path to success. Welcome to another episode of Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. I'm Sheila Slick, your host. And today, my special guest is Harry Duran. Harry is founder of Fullcast, where he helps thought leaders grow their network and expand their reach through podcasting. With over 10 years handling all aspects from coaching to setup to launch to marketing and promotion, he allows you to focus on your genius. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me on.
What led you to becoming a podcast strategist?
So the agency started in 2015, but prior to that, a year before, I had started my own show. So that's Podcast Junkies. And I was leaving and sort of ending my corporate job. I'd been 20 plus years in marketing. I worked for E-Trade and JP Morgan Chase. But as that was winding down, I had heard about podcasting because I was doing a lot of working on a mobile app with a friend of mine. And I have a passion for electronic music and DJing. I grew up in the 80s. I learned on vinyl. And so at the time, I thought maybe I'd start a podcast so I could promote this app that I was working on with a friend of mine. And I was listening to podcasts about mobile app development. I'm like, wow, I can learn. I was just fascinated that I could learn through a podcast. And I went to a conference called New Media Expo in January 2014. It was blogging, YouTube, and podcasting. Those were the three channels. And I said, okay, I'm going to learn podcasting. And then I saw all these podcasters there. Pat Flynn was there, Amy Porterfield, all these OG podcasters. And I said, you know what? It's going to be hard to track down DJs for a podcast. Let me switch to podcasters because they've got good mics and I want to meet people in the community. And I think that was the key kind of aha moment, Sheila. In that moment, I said, this is an opportunity to talk to people, and I'm going to be talking to them for like an hour. And at the time, people were using just audio. This is 2014. And I said, I want video, but there was not a lot of good tools. So I had to piece together Skype with call recorder so I could get the video. It wasn't recorded, but I could see the person, and we were just recording audio because I knew there's something that I knew that said, I want to develop this relationship with this person. So fast forward to present day, it's been 380 interviews. That show's going on now, 12 years of just having that show. And what I realized is as I was having these conversations, I would go to podcast conferences and then you would see me in the hallway and be like, oh, we just had an hour conversation. So you know the face. Harry, how you doing? It's nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. So it was just like, it really strengthened this idea of podcast being your virtual stage. You can decide who you want to invite on to and what type of relationship you want. So because my job was winding down in 2014, I did everything that first year. Like I booked the guests, I recorded the show, I edited it, I scheduled it, I got t-shirts, I went to conferences, I tried to promote it, like everything you can think of. I wrote the show notes, I was listening to the episodes, I created a website, literally everything you can think of. It's like those guys you see who are busking with the harmonica and they're playing the drum and they're playing the guitar. And it's like, I was like that for podcasting. But then I realized there was a lot about entrepreneurship that I didn't know. So I said, I'm going to hire a coach. So I hired a coach for entrepreneurship. And when I started going to these sessions, these mastermind meetings, we'd have these 3-day meetings. Man, it was crazy because I was meeting these business owners, these 6-figure, 7-figure business owners were blowing my mind. I didn't really know this world existed coming from 9 to 5, right? I was like, oh, you just get a paycheck and that's your life. And then here it was really interesting because these people were like building businesses. And what I realized quickly is they understand the concept of opportunity cost. They know what an hour of their time is worth. And so I quickly realized all this podcasting stuff that I was learning, if I packaged it together into a done-for-you service, I could let them focus on their genius. And a lot of times for business owners, their genius is not editing graphics or editing audio and video or writing copy or, creating clips. They're focused on creating content or just being behind the mic. So I quickly packaged it together, and my first clients came from that business mastermind that I was in. And then I realized, okay, this is resonating because people are understanding how much value it is to have someone handle all the challenging aspects of podcasting so they could focus on the fun part, which is actually the recording.
I love how you turned it into a business. And I had no idea you came what it sounds like a financial background,
More corporate marketing. I was in the marketing department. Yeah.
but for financial institutions.
Yeah, financial institutions. I started my career as a teller in a bank.
There's podcasts about everything, but
Sure.
there's a lot of financial advisors that are always podcasting. And I think
Yeah.
the important thing there is trying to figure out which one's the best fit for me. And that could be one of the advantages of having a podcast if you are in that industry. What other industries do you think really see great results from having a podcast if they're using it as a tool to educate or perhaps amplify that visibility?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to think about the podcast, and it's really important, and why primarily I work with business owners when we're launching shows. We don't do really a lot of like vanity shows or these super high production value shows, that cost $50,000 an episode to produce. Like since I'm an entrepreneur myself, one of those earlier conversations we have with business owners is like, what's the one thing you want a listener to do as a result of listening to the episode? What's your call to action? Do you have an email list? Do you have a lead magnet? Are you moving them into the next way that they continue to work with you? Because it's very important. And one of the things we talk about in the beginning is make sure that everything you do around the podcast is pulling people in with each step. Even something as simple as the name of the show, right? My first show is called Podcast Junkies. In 2020, I started another show called the Vertical Farming Podcast because I was interested in the industry. I did some research. I saw there was a lot of funding coming in. So coming from a corporate background and a marketing background, I said, well, let me think like a marketer. I made it the most obvious name possible, the Vertical Farming Podcast. And the domain was available, and if you Google those three words, Sheila, my show is like 9 out of the 10 listings on the front page of Google for that show. The show's generated over $100,000 in sponsorship revenue, and I interview CEOs and founders. And what that really showed me is the importance of being very, very specific about the creation of the show, the title of the show, even the episodes. There's only 3 fields that are available from an SEO perspective on a podcast: the name of the show, the author of the show, and the title of the individual episodes. And so it's very important, and it's just something I think about as we're developing shows. One of the exercises we do is we have the business owners title their first 12 episodes. And these should be outcome-based titles, because nowadays with Apple and Spotify and now YouTube, people are searching for solutions to their problems through podcasting. So when they see that title and if it feels like it solves a pain point for them, then you can bet that they're going to be clicking on that episode.
Wow, you gave me a whole new way to see podcasting, because sometimes we start it as a hobby or we want to dig deep into a specific topic, but you're a perfect example of how you can find an opportunity. Sounds like you found a passion in it combined with your skills, and over a decade later helping others build their businesses. The other podcast was about a topic that you were passionate about.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was learning about the topic, and I said, I just sort of reverse engineered the idea, because we actually got the first sponsor for the show before I even launched the episode. It was like 2020, and I was talking to this marketing department, and I said, it was COVID, so nobody's traveling. I said, how much were you spending at a booth at a conference typically? He's like, oh, we spend like $20,000. And I was like, well, I did some quick math in my head. I said, for 9,000, you could sponsor the first season of the show. We're laser focused on this industry. These are the names of the people that I'm going to be speaking to. And he said, yes. And I hadn't even released an episode, Sheila. So it was like, the light bulb went off. I'm like, wow, if you think like a marketer, we release, we do sponsorships in quarters, because that's how marketing teams think, this, Q1, Q2, et cetera. So it's been a really interesting exercise in thinking through the importance of why you do a show. With that first show, I have this mantra is like treat your guests like gold. I always wanted to put all my energy in making sure the guests had a great experience from sign up to interview to afterwards. I made everything easy for them to share. And then with my second show, my mantra is treat your sponsors like gold. So I would mention my sponsors everywhere I go. I've spoken to Podcast Movement. I've shared this story of the Vertical Farming Podcast. My sponsors cultivated IGS. They were really believed in the concept of the show early on. And one of my sponsors in 2023 texted me and he said, "Hey Harry, do you want to go to Dubai?" And I was like, "Sure." He's like, "Well, we've got a pavilion there for indoor farming. We've already paid for it. We would love to fly you out there, put you in a hotel." And they even built a booth with Vertical Farming Podcast all around it. I've got a picture of it. It's really fantastic. And it was just, I went from zero visibility in vertical farming and now I'm being flown to conferences. And I just came back from a conference that I go to every year called Indoor AgCon in Las Vegas. So it's just building up relationships. And that show itself has gotten over 180 episodes as well. So I'm well over 500 plus with both episodes. And it's just been this incredible experience, and I'm sure you can relate to this, of just having long form conversations, being comfortable with having conversations. And you don't even have to be a subject matter expert in the topic. You just have to be curious. You have to be a good listener. You have to learn how to pull threads and just all these things that you get better. And I think it's been a great journey for me to learn all that.
As entrepreneurs, we all have ups and downs or
Oh, yeah.
obstacles or challenges. What are some of the things that you feel that you had to overcome?
I think what was challenging in the beginning is really like understanding entrepreneurship. Like this is not something you're taught. When you get a job, a 9 to 5 job, your focus is of what your boss tells you to do, and you show up and you get that paycheck in your account deposited in your account twice a month. And thankfully, I had good bosses who helped me with promotions, and I learned a lot about how things work within those businesses. But the real like wake up call was, like I said, like getting into entrepreneurship and realizing you have to be comfortable with failure and you have to learn the things that you weren't taught, and you have to be all things, at least aware of them: sales, marketing, finance, accounting, like all these things that you have to really, like, if you're serious about being an entrepreneur. And there were early things that I spent thousands of dollars on: programs, marketing programs to try to grow an audience, and which resulted in like zero results. And early on, you start, spending this kind of money. You're like, this is crazy. Like, how are people selling you something that's not providing a result? And it was just like crazy. And I was like, I never wanted to be in that position. And it helped me think about also how I could be better with my sales and in terms of what I promise and how I deliver to my clients. But yeah, there were a lot of experiences where I, especially with accounting early on, I sort of like had someone else do it, and I delayed, much longer than I needed to. And I paid the price, in taxes and all that sort of stuff. But it's like, you can't put your head in the ground and pretend everything is going to work out. So you have to really like push yourself. And then lately with sales is like, okay, like how do you have a good sales call? Like how do you handle objections? How do you know, talk about results with people in a way that's helpful for them and be results driven. And so yeah, there was a lot of coaching that I spent on myself to learn how to become a better entrepreneur, to learn how to you know be a better agency owner. But it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. Entrepreneurship is a really roller coaster ride at times. And, there's days when you're like trying to make payroll and pay your team and, all these things that, you don't think about. But, I think if you persist and you quickly realize if it's for you, if it's not for you. But I think I love the freedom that it's given me. I love how it's pushed me in terms of like challenges to become a better communicator, and a better boss, and a better partner for the people that I work with.
If you could give one key takeaway or a piece of advice to somebody listening today saying, Harry, I absolutely loved everything you had to say about podcasting. Instead of just being a listener, I want to start my own podcast.
Yeah.
What would that tip be?
I think it's kind of pulling it all together and saying, if you're considering having a podcast, I think it's be clear about your why. And you mind if I tell you like a quick story?
No.
When I was leaving my corporate world, and I tried something in I went to go work for my half brother like in Atlanta with construction. I tried that for like 2 years, and you know what they say about family businesses, like it didn't work out. So I had to go back home and for a little while live with my parents. But I had tickets to a flight to Thailand to visit a friend I had met like a couple of years ago, and I was like, I need a break. I'm gonna go to Thailand. And so I went to Thailand. It was like a 26-hour trip. It was incredible. The first day there, he picks me up on a moped and we go on this hike and we go up to this trail and there's like a waterfall. So we go to the top of the waterfall and we're overlooking the valley. And he's standing on the other side of like the ledge and he's like, "Hey, Harry, come over here. The view is even better over here." And I was like, "Of course." I think I was wearing like flip-flops or something. So I step over to where he is and there's a stream right in front of me. I didn't even think about it, but I stepped into the stream and the rock underneath was like super slick. It's like it was like stepping on a bar of soap. So I go up in the air and I land on my back and I proceed to be like carried towards the edge of the waterfall. So this is happening within seconds, Sheila. It's crazy. Like I felt like one of those little paper boats you put like on the street and it's like going into the sewer. Like he was moving that fast. And I could see my friend like standing at the edge, like watching me with his eyes open. And there was a big boulder on the left-hand side. And I instinctively just stuck out my left leg. And thankfully that stopped me from like going over like the edge of the waterfall. And I'm in Thailand, so like it wouldn't have been pretty. I don't know if I would have died or just been like it would have been long and painful, but it was just like crazy, like scary. He pulls me over to the side. My heart is beating like crazy. And I was just we ended up like having a good rest of the day, a good rest of the trip. But it's one of those things that it starts to sit with you. And I got back home, I got back to New York, and then over the years, as I started developing like this idea of like, you know, podcasting and finding your voice, I thought, man, how sad would it have been if I had died with my voice inside me? And I was like, it just came to me. I remember it coming to me one day because I was like, I was thinking about that moment and I'm like, and it's always resonated with me with podcasting because I truly believe that everyone watching and everyone listening right now has a story inside them that needs to be heard, that needs to be told. And that's why I've made it my mission to help as many people as possible find their voice. Because I think it's important because I think, you know, if we go to a restaurant and there's 100 people in that restaurant, there's 100 stories. You just have to be interested. You just have to be curious. And so that's my message to people that are starting a podcast. Pick a topic you love talking about that you would talk about whether you had the show or not, and realize that bring your own story to the table as well, you know, because it's really powerful. You know, stories are really powerful and they all unite us. It goes back to being around the campfire. So it's really important to be really clear and solid about who you're speaking to and why you're doing it. And that passion will come through and the listener will hear it. I always say in a podcast conversation, there's three people. There's the host, the guest, and the listener. Singular. There's just one person listening at a time to our conversation right now. And that's why I always want to make sure they're included in the conversation. And as long as you don't lose sight of that, the rest can come after that. You can think about like, you know, how it affects your business and, you know, get into the tactical stuff of like what you're going to talk about and make sure each episode delivers on its promise. But at that core, you know, to be really dialed in about your why you're doing the podcast is really key.
And you're able to help with everything from the idea to honing down the name
Yes.
to coming up with the episode titles, the whole package.
Yes.
Where can we learn more about you online?
Fullcast, FULLCAST.co. And there you can book a time with me and we can have a chat to see how a podcast can help you.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Harry.
Thank you for this opportunity to share my story with your audience. I truly appreciate it, Sheila.
And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. Until next time.